some days one ball may feel good, the next day it may not. It depends on maybe how, I don't know, the humidity in the air or how old the ball was, or, I think there's a lot of variables with obviously Mother Nature and with the balls.
Yes, it's time, ladies and gentlemen. We now address the Deflategate, the latest on Deflategate. A lot coming out this week, a lot going on. A lot of talk about, essentially, I guess, moving forward here. Tom Brady basically saying, you know what, we're taking this to the court. Obviously, the suspension was upheld. Roger Goodell, the 4-game suspension, and Tom Brady was not too happy about this, taking this to court. And so a lot of people are convinced that, Tom Brady, is going to get suspended, that he's guilty and this and that. And I think people are looking too much into the whole idea of Tom Brady, his legacy is ruined, that this is, that Tom Brady is a cheater, that he's, the only one who does, deflates footballs or whatever, yada yada. And for those who have listened to the Tyler Werner show, to those who even listen, way back when this was first coming out after the Patriots won the Super Bowl and everything, leading up to the Super Bowl and whatnot, back on, the Kutztown radio days. For those who have listened, have continued listening, or have just, happened to listen to any of the discussions I've had with Deflategate, I've been steadfast in saying this is, it's a failure that the NFL had, I guess, supposedly such a weak policy that now they've gone back and revised with, the policy of measuring footballs, PSI, this and that, and have changed I guess now supposedly with Tom Brady, it's a 4-game suspension for deflating footballs. The Wells report, at the end of the day, didn't really find in a court setting, didn't really find any, actual evidence for grounds to suspend Tom Brady, or whatever. Now I've once again, I've continued to say, I'm sure that, Tom Brady does do a little wink with, his ball boys, does, like them a little underinflated, maybe, and want,
I've handled dozens of balls over the past week.
Yeah, I'm sure the ball boys, and
to me, those
Tom
balls
Brady
are perfect.
Likes the balls a little lighter, perhaps. But we've gone through this before. There are other guys like, say Aaron Rodgers, he likes them more inflated to, the ceiling, I guess, of the allowable PSI range. I don't think we need to go through all the, this and that. There's other quarterbacks. As far as gamesmanship goes, Ron Jaworski has said this is, not the, he's probably not the only one who does this. And again, not to mention, once again, the when the balls in the Indianapolis Colts AFC Championship game were supposedly brought back to their normal level of inflation that they're supposed to be at, unbeknownst to Tom Brady during the game, supposedly, that's when the Patriots really took over the game and were playing even better with supposedly more properly inflated footballs anyway. So, as far as the whole theory, I understand, people don't like, and flouting the rules and whatever else, there can be a bit of an issue with that, obviously, that people are going to have. But as far as this destroying Tom Brady, at least in my mind, I don't see it at all as really having a bearing one way or the other. Now, I look at it one way that maybe people don't even think of, and as much as maybe people want to think, physically this may have had an effect on the game, which again apparently did not in this AFC Championship game, when once again Brady only played better in the second half than the first half, when the ball second half the balls were properly inflated. I got to think that psychologically as well, there's like some kind of Tom Brady thinking, or any quarterback thinking, all right, the ball, I got more of a feel in the ball, and perhaps that psychological effect, continues throughout the second half, with apparently maybe Tom Brady not even realizing that the balls are more inflated than what he's used to, but he doesn't know that. I mean, I could go on and on here about this and how, again, I mean, poorly constructed apparently the whole idea was with the way the NFL referees measured the balls. And again, the Tuesday it was after the Patriots won the Super Bowl, I sat on the Tyler Werner show on Kutztown Radio, and I said, all right, my initial reaction to this, and it hasn't changed almost, 5.5 months later now. My initial reaction was, well, geez, if this is such a big deal for the in the NFL's mind, why is the policy for measuring footballs, why have the footballs been so poorly guarded? If this, proper inflation of footballs is such a big deal. That's what I sat there saying, and that's looking back at the policy, because the old CBA, the old, collective bargaining agreement, for those who don't know what that stands for, actually only said that if a team is found deflating footballs, this is a team thing. The team is fined $25,000. So evidently, that's apparently in the old CBA, before any of these policy changes and suspensions were handed down here. That was the policy. So now, throughout all this with Deflategate and everything, Roger Goodell reacting to maybe public pressure. I've brought this up before. Back in May, when things were, kind of coming to light here with how this may be handled. After a 3 months of absolutely nothing out of the Roger Goodell camp and his investigators and whatever else. That's when, eventually, about a month ago, or not even a month ago, but Roger Goodell basically saying, all right, well, we're going to suspend Tom Brady for 4 games. We're not going to, that's pretty much that. That's what came out back in May. And, Tom Brady essentially, can't we come to some kind of grip here, or I guess compromise? That didn't happen. And before I even get into the phone aspect of it, several days ago I wanted to bring up an article here that kind of highlights, kind of echoes some of these thoughts I had, that the whole PSI thing, the procedures, the suspension, the new suspension policy, I guess we should say, that is, is brought to light, kind of after all this happened. An article, Kevin Seifert from NFL Nation, how the NFL policy now, the changes undermine the Tom Brady suspension. Now, in theory, these changes should close many of the procedural holes revealed in the Wells report. But more importantly, they undermine the league's attempts to penalize the Patriots and Tom Brady in particular for violating the rules that at the time carried little established means for documenting compliance. Brady obviously appealed his 4-game suspension for being at least generally aware of the deflation scheme and might file a federal lawsuit. Well, we saw that's going to happen now since it's not being vacated. Now, previously, the Wells report demonstrated the game referee measured pregame inflations of the team's 12 balls on his own. but without recording the readings. If needed, the ref adjusted the pressure to ensure its range between 12.5 psi and 13.5 psi. Then the balls typically were delivered to the field by a member of the locker room staff. The new policy basically requires the referee to designate 2 crew members to carry out the pregame football inspection. The balls will be numbered and their pregame inflation noted in writing. Any football falling outside the mandated range will be inflated to exactly 13 psi. And now getting down to the meat of the issue here. If the proper inflation of footballs is important to you, and not everyone agrees on the significance here, but nevertheless, if the proper inflation is important to the league, then these tweaks make sense. But for Brady, however, each change can be viewed as a variable that casts doubt on culpability. Consider this. The NFL has now acknowledged that it's important to know the exact pregame inflation of each football. Brady was suspended without that acknowledgement. And again, this goes back to what I said. If it was so important back then, why was your policy so weak? And, I guess in this case, easy to flout. Or, if you're going to, obviously blame Brady for this, and I'm sure, again, but if it was such a big deal, why was your policy so, filled with many loopholes, and now you change it. Now you want to suspend Tom Brady for the changes that are being made that weren't a part of the policy during this game when this whole Deflategate thing came out. 2. The league admits that security surrounding footballs needed to be improved. Proof of Brady's guilt was based in part on a Patriots employee taking game footballs into a bathroom during pregame warm-ups. So there you go. That's number 2. Taking the balls into the bathroom while we're at it. So you're admitting that the security surrounding the footballs need to be improved. And I sat there and I said this after the Super Bowl, after this was coming out with the Deflategate. I thought, well, gee, the security apparently, guarding these footballs is awful then. And I'm sure during the Super Bowl they were, really watched over much better. But again, the security of watching the balls then apparently was really not up to par. And I sat there and thought, well, geez, it sounded like perhaps a plot line to a Three Stooges episode in the 1930s, if that's how weak the policy was. Mo, Larry, and Curly hiding somewhere with the balls and deflate. I could picture something like this, but it's 2015 for crying out loud. And again, apparently the policy was not that important or whatever, that the balls did not. If the NFL was so concerned about balls being deflated, then yeah, maybe they ought to be watched over a little better than what they were being watched over. Number 3, the NFL knows now that there should be a detailed process for checking compliance at halftime and after the game. Brady's suspension was rooted in an unprecedented and chaotic halftime scene at the AFC Championship game, in which 2 separate needles were used to test some footballs before time ran out. And number 4 here, the league has recognized in effect that its previous approach was lacking. Brady has been suspended for participation in the scheme with little of the documentation and process the NFL now considers essential. So that's basically that. And again, just kind of continues. It kind of sums up a lot of the things I've been saying, a lot of the criticisms I've had here with the policy, and do have with Roger Goodell, amongst many other things I could call Roger Goodell out. That many things that he's failed at in recent years, certainly as far as suspensions, whatnot goes. This is like purely a reaction to public pressure and whatnot. And this is on speculation for those who, I guess don't want to look into this, who just right away want to label Tom Brady, he should be suspended for this and that. Well, according to what the NFL had in place at the time, apparently not. And a lot of this evidence, so-called evidence that, the Wells report has or whatever, is it may look like on an NFL level, like signs point towards Tom Brady should be suspended or whatever. And, well, if anything, apparently, according to the CBA that was in place at the time, well, a team fine of $25,000. But because, Roger Goodell's taking it to this length, suspending Tom Brady for 4 games, then it's perhaps gone really far. And Tom Brady, people who are telling him to give in or whatever and, take the 4-game suspension or whatever, no. And admitting, after all this and after, going through these appeals or whatever else and basically saying I didn't have anything to do with the footballs or whatever else. And for those looking to, for that, I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. This is his legacy here. And I mean, people have yet to really, for those who I've heard out there complaining and whatnot about Tom Brady and his legacy, how, Tom Brady should no longer, Tom Brady's not a great, it's not like Tom Brady is suddenly a bad quarterback or anything like that. People want to put so much stock into this, these footballs and whatever else. And again, I look at the rest of the AFC Championship game, then when the balls were supposedly inflated, properly, and Tom Brady only played better. So again, I mean, if anybody has a good explanation here as to why this is such a huge deal, I know, gamesmanship, flouting the rules or whatever is one thing. But this issue in particular, if it's such a big deal, somebody please explain, I guess.
Well, somebody better explain, or there'll be a lot of explaining to do.
You're right, exactly right, as Roy Wally once said. But anyways, Tom Brady had this statement. Since, again, Tom Brady's going to have none of this. He's going to take this to court, ladies and gentlemen. And essentially, this is what he had to say. I'm very disappointed by the NFL's decision to uphold the 4-game suspension against me. I did nothing wrong, and no one in the Patriots organization did either. Despite submitting to hours of testimony over the past 6 months, it is disappointing that the commissioner upheld my suspension based upon a standard that was probable, that I was generally aware of these, the deflations of the footballs. The fact is that neither I nor any equipment person did anything of which we have been accused. He dismissed my hours of testimony, and it's disappointing that he found it unreliable. Now, I know also, of course, people were bringing up earlier this week the smashing of the phone issue. Well, apparently, Tom Brady, like these text messages and whatever else they could have found were apparently already given over. And also, I mean, the phone company, if they want to get a hold of text message, here's a little lesson, people. They can go through phone records and find these. But anyhow, I also disagree with yesterday's narrative surrounding my cell phone. I replaced my broken Samsung phone with a new iPhone 6 after my attorneys made it clear to the NFL that my actual phone device would not be subjected to investigation under any circumstances. As a member of a union, I was under no obligation to set a new precedent going forward, nor was I made aware at any time during Mr. Wells' investigation that failing to subject to my cell phone to investigation would result in any discipline. Most importantly, I have never written, texted, emailed to anybody at any time anything related to football air pressure before this issue was raised at the AFC Championship game in January. To suggest that I destroyed a phone to avoid giving the NFL information it requested is completely wrong. And it, again, it goes on and on. If you want to read the rest of the statement from Tom Brady, you can go ahead and, I guess, read that for yourself.
To me, those balls are perfect.
So, again, there's a lot here that, as far as the NFL goes, there's, it's one thing to suspend somebody, and it's another thing in this case when, there's, evidently with the way the NFL was handling things at the time that, Tom Brady's being accused for here. It's a totally different thing when you're going to suspend him for something that was, a 4-game suspension when there was nothing in place for 4-game suspensions of deflating footballs. So that's pretty much that, ladies and gentlemen. And everybody is, a lot of people, who are against Tom Brady here or whatever, are saying how, well, he's going to be suspended and, or he should be suspended. Why doesn't he just take his suspension and this and that? Well, at this point, obviously, he's not going to do that. Now, because it's going to the courts here, the appeal, he can play all 16 games here this season, not take the 4-game suspension. This can be, decided in court then and whatever else. And, at the end of the season, if for some reason, the judge was to say, well, Tom Brady's guilty here, he should be suspended now or whatever else, since now the suspension's kind of off now, I mean, then it's, Tom Brady can appeal early next year and, before next season and this and that. And it's just, to me, it's a no-brainer that Tom Brady's, his legacy is under attack here. I don't think he's just going to, sit and take the, and even if, if he's found guilty or of anything, which I don't, at this point, I don't see anything, as far as grounds to be suspended for 4 games, then I don't know what else to say. I mean, it's, again, at the end of the day, I don't think this whole Deflategate thing should impact Brady's legacy, but, some people, in the minds of many people, I guess, it's whatever. All I can say is, this coming season, if, the Patriots miss the playoffs or something, that'd be an absolute shocker. And then maybe there's some legit, I don't know, if Tom Brady, plays all 16 games, and if suddenly he has such a bad season and whatnot, and I don't know, maybe there's some truth to this. But again, that's it's Tom Brady at the end of the day. Just give it up. Like I've said before, he's, in my opinion, he's now, whether he's played with overinflated balls or slightly underinflated balls, he's the greatest quarterback in NFL history. If you don't agree, I guess you don't agree with that, then you don't agree with that, and that's fine. You're gonna place so much stock into this Deflategate thing. I don't know. I've kind of said all I can say on it right now, and there's maybe Tom Brady, he does like his balls a little softer on the field.
To me,
of course,
those balls are perfect.
Maybe there's a bit of truth to that. He likes them lighter, he's said already. But at the end of the day, as far as this being such a big deal with the rules, I mean, hey, at the end of the day, you got the other greatest quarterback in the NFL right now, or, perhaps I'd say number 1 right now, Aaron Rodgers, who likes them more inflated. And it, comes down to feel and this and that and whatever else, I guess Bill Belichick said, and when he addressed this in a very lengthy press conference.
I've handled dozens of balls over the past week.
At the end of the day, apparently Tom Brady's not the only one who's, likes the ball softer. Maybe, stuff like this. Maybe they're just Tom Brady or whoever else is the ones that got caught, I guess, supposedly. But again, at the end of the day, this is just, I think Roger Goodell trying to beat his chest here. I'm the commissioner, trying to redeem himself over some other failures that have happened in recent years with how things have been handled and suspensions and whatnot. And, hey, one of the faces of the NFL, perhaps the face of the NFL for the last decade and a half, Tom Brady. There's a chance maybe to redeem myself, and again, public pressure, this and that. But at the end of the day, in a courtroom setting, I don't think the NFL, Roger Goodell, I don't think things hold up here with the Wells report and everything. And I think this 4-game suspension of Tom Brady, I think, according to the old CBA, I don't think it holds up. And I don't ultimately, again, in court, I don't think it will hold up. And that's the bottom line. So we'll see what else, it'll be interesting to see, what happens. And it's not like I'm an extreme Tom Brady fan or anything like that. But at the end of the day, I think Tom Brady wins this and should win this, and that's pretty much that, and it's going to get shoved up Roger Goodell's tail. And, with all this deflated football talk now, I guess it's time for, a couple words here from, one of them being from the official meatball of the Tyler Werner Show, Brady and Belichick's slow-cooked Italian meatballs. Facebook.com/Tyler Werner Show, or send your thoughts in the YouTube.
What defines the perfect ball? It's not just about size when it comes to Brady and Belichick's slow-cooked Italian meatballs.
I've handled dozens of balls over the past week. We prepare our balls over time. The texture of the balls is very easy to identify.
And that slow-cooked texture is one of the qualities that make Brady and Belichick's meatballs stand above the rest. But it's also Brady's unique rubbing process that only he has the authority to perform.
When I pick those footballs out, to me, they're perfect. I don't want anyone touching the balls after that. I don't want anyone rubbing them. To me, those balls are perfect.
Once the balls reached an equilibrium, we're down to the rubbing process.
Brady and Belichick's slow-cooked Italian meatballs. When you're looking to make it a pasta night, we're doing a little catering. Like Brady would say, to me, those balls are perfect.
What is it about good sex that makes me have to crap? Guess it's all that pump and dump. Who really jarred something loose tight?